What's up, y'all? Welcome to the live stream. Oh my God, what could we possibly have to talk about this week? Except the only topic anyone wants to talk about this week, which is how freaking good my outfit is today. Hello. That's it, right? I went to breakfast with my wife this morning and I dressed up because, you know, just because you've been married for a long time, 2019, 29, no, I don't know, a long time. Doesn't mean you can't, you know, make a little effort. So, so then I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna keep a nice outfit on for the live stream. So you guys also get fancy Bardwell. Yeah. I accidentally queued this question, so it's gonna sit on screen until I answer it. But I feel like we have to, like, everybody wants to talk about the New Jersey drone situation. So I feel like we have to talk about that. So if you have questions about the New Jersey, or sort of like, obviously there's questions like, what is going on? But if you have specific angles, takes, theories about the New Jersey drone situation, go ahead, put them in the chat. Blunty will queue them up, and I will respond to some of them. I know this is probably going to make Blunty cringe, because I think I have a sense, Blunty, that you hate this kind of story. Like you're like a nuts and bolts guy, and in some ways there's not a lot of nuts and bolts here. But I know you will dutifully queue the questions. Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
Because, you know, at the end of the day, you get the job done. And then I'm the asshole who has to respond to the bullshit. That's why I make a good team. Who's flying their drones? Did we lose that other question? Can you? Yeah, okay. Mark FPV question got requeued.
I queued it.
I accidentally clicked the button. Anyway, I accidentally clicked that without meaning it. So I'm glad you requeued it. Here's what we're doing. If you're new here, we're going to be answering your questions. That's it. You're going to ask questions. Why are half your keycaps yellow but not symmetrically at all? That's a good question, Will Cube. That's a good question. So maybe someone else in the chat can figure it out. for you. Does anybody answer Will Cube's question? No, it's the Ukrainian flag. My editor Fabio lived in Ukraine. He's Italian, but he lived in Ukraine. He's married to a Ukrainian woman, and I feel a lot of solidarity. And so, as part of that, I got some Ukrainian keycaps and made my keyboard look like the Ukrainian flag. Yeah. Anyway, it's a small thing, but I think it's going to make a big difference in the long run. I think that's my keyboard showing solidarity with Ukraine is going to be the thing that puts it all just over. Anyway, ask your questions in the chat. And Blunty will queue them up. Ask your questions, obviously, in the Discord server. Over here on the right side of the screen, my Discord server. These are my patrons. They're extra special because they pay me a little bit of money every month. And then in response, I call them extra special. And that's, that's pandering. That's what that is. Thank you guys for your support. And hit the $sign down here and leave a super chat if you want to. I will read the super chats in about 10 or 15 minutes, but I like to get the stream rolling before I dive into the super chats. So, careful, Super Deluxe. Careful, Super Deluxe. Super Deluxe, I know you and I assume you're joking, but when people start making like politically charged comments, my finger starts hovering over the ban button. So I'm going to assume you're joking. His face. I really want, apropos of nothing, I really want a copy of the 3D model that Super Deluxe uses to make his samurai mask so that I can have his samurai mask on a live stream once. Or, I don't know, commit crimes while wearing his samurai mask and get him in trouble. Something like that. Oh, you're a moderator, Super Deluxe. You can ban yourself. Yeah, good. So Steve Martin says, and I go to Ukraine on aid trips for the military. Slava Ukraini. And Steve, we all contribute in our own ways. I have keycaps on my keyboard. Everybody, it's not for you to say that your contribution is better than mine. No, I'm fucking around. Okay, let's talk about the drones, okay? And we got a bunch of questions queued up. Long story short, a lot of people are reporting that they're seeing drones flying in the New Jersey area at night, although a lot of that has sort of expanded, and now we're seeing drone reportings in other places. I think the first thought that I want to get out there is that there's a lot of hysteria around this. And, many of the videos that I've seen of drones are, obviously just an airplane. It's like, I don't know, you guys, I'm standing outside of LaGuardia. There's a bunch of freaking drones coming in, landing here at LaGuardia. It's so freaking weird. You guys, what have all these... That's my... How'd I do, New Yorkers? I have no idea which borough that accent is from, if any. So, a huge amount of the hysteria is just people seeing lights in the sky over a city. That's just a thing that happens and, are explainable. But I've definitely seen some videos that, to my expert eye, are probably UAVs of some kind that are probably not aircraft or manned aircraft. And I think that, there's other weird angles to this. Now, I want to be clear, there's questions like, what are they? Have they drones been flying for days straight? What's going on? Facts are very, very scarce here. Facts are very scarce. There's a bunch of video of weird things. There have been some statements from the government. Blunty, you and I were talking about some statements from the government about this. And I don't know, I didn't really prepare for this story. Sorry, that's not the live stream that you signed up for. But we saw the federal government and the military saying, we don't think there's the drones, we don't know what they are, but we don't think there's any harm here. There's no danger. And it's well, if you don't know what they are, how the hell can you tell me they're not dangerous? And it feels to me like they know more than they're saying. Well, obviously, right? And there's an angle here where they can't say all of what they know for various reasons, but they're trying to like calm the hysteria. I don't know. So something's going on. To my mind, something's going on. Right? One of the theories I heard that resonated. Blunty, is it time to just share random wild ass theories that seem right to us? Do you have anything to add at this? We were talking about this a little bit before the stream started, and we kind of got cut off by the start of the stream. You were saying something about a TFR in the area.
Yeah, I linked the TFR in the Discord. I mean, whether or not you think it's just planes or not, the military in the area thought there was enough reason to put up a TFR at the military base where these sightings were happening a few days after the sighting started. And that is an ongoing TFR until December 26th. Maybe it's a happenstance, maybe not, but it is a specific UAS TFR, only allowing military UAS in the area. So just as a thought experiment, right? If there was nothing happening, I doubt that the military would care enough to put up a TFR for nothing happening, right?
Right. And it's interesting that the TFR happened after the sightings started, because like if this was one of the theories is that this is some kind of a secret military program, the government is like, don't worry guys, we don't know what these are. Wink, wink. We can't tell you because it's secret. And it's not a danger. See, that's one of the ways they could say, we don't know what these are. We can't say what these are, but it's not a danger because they actually do know what they are, and it's they're drones, right? But if that were the case, then the TFR would go up before the secret program started, right? So then what the timing there might be like, oh shit, there's some drones. Well, let's put up a TFR, and at least if they're DJI drones, they'll refuse to fly, right? I don't know. But that is a concrete thing that happened. People are talking about the fact that... Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say the other way to look at it is they put up a TFR so people wouldn't fly their drones near a military base. I don't believe you need... I guess it depends on the airspace over the military base, but in most cases, most pilots are not going to be allowed to fly over a military base anyway, so you don't need to put a TFR up for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, interesting. It would already be like a prohibited area for DJI drones and stuff.
Right, correct.
Yeah. Do DJI drones, if you use a TFR, would the DJI drone automatically know that there was a TFR? Like, I know they download a database periodically, and if you don't connect to the internet and download the database, then they yell at you. But like, you could take off an Avata without connecting it to your phone, and it wouldn't necessarily know if it was in a TFR if the TFR had just been put up. Is that right?
Yeah, I personally don't know anything about that. Okay.
Low-tech guy, TFR is temporary flight restriction. It's a FAA thing where they say you can't fly in this area. So there's a ton of questions here, like, oh, is it the New Jersey FPV group trolling everyone? Doubt it. There was one Reddit post that I saw which had a fairly detailed picture of one of the aircraft at night, so it was only so detailed, but cross-referenced it with a certain Lockheed industrial drone, and again, it's just pictures and comments I saw on Reddit, so who knows? It could all just be fake, right? But seemed to indicate that it was a not just like a hobbyist drone, you know. If it was a test, the people in charge failed. Well, we don't know what they're testing. Anybody here have DVR footage? I'm skeptical at this point of any footage that I see, because at this point there's enough hysteria that there's motivation for people to fake footage and, create an uproar. So at this point, if you were to show me the most detailed footage you could possibly show me, man, I would want to send it by the corridor crew guys just for them to look at it and tell me if they thought it was faked. There's a lot of motivation right now for people to fake things. Yeah. How can they fly for hours if they're the size of a car? Well, we don't know. I don't know if we know definitively how big they are. When something's flying in the air, it's hard to judge its size. And I don't know if we know definitively how long they're flying, because like you see at a drone show, drones can take each other's place, etc. They're like the idea that you are sure that one aircraft was in the air for hours at a time. I think that's hard to validate. So there's a lot of like uncertainty here. The fact that they have lights on them, so they have standard indicator lights on them, suggests that they are, like, if it was an Iranian attack drone, it probably wouldn't have a red and a white and a green light on it. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things, like, as we move into the speculation part, right? I think there's a couple things that you could definitively say, okay?
Yeah.
Right, we have the technology to follow a drone back to where it came from. That's not impossible, right?
Absolutely.
So either all of these drones are one-offs and flying into the ground at some location, or they're returning to somewhere that we obviously clearly know where they are going, because you can follow the drone.
You could follow them to some degree with radar. You know,
correct. That's just a fact, right?
Especially, and if I could interrupt you here, especially in the airspace over like New Jersey, Jersey, New York, one of the most congested airspaces in the entire world. So if you've got these drones, and especially now that we're a few days or weeks into the thing, like someone's like, where are these drones coming from? And even if you couldn't like follow it with another drone or a helicopter, like you should have an idea of where they're going. You're absolutely right. Go ahead, continue.
Got derailed because we were saying that. Yeah, I mean, okay, so what else do we know about the situation, right? The military is not denying that there are drones there. At least that's not what I've seen. The news articles the press releases that I've seen say we're not aware. The FAA goes, we're not aware of anything doing operations in that area. The military is like, hey, we're not aware of any UAS over there. But I don't know. It feels weird because I at least haven't seen an outright admission to say, no, there's nothing over us. It's just planes, right? Which seems very easy to say when you're over a military base. So I think it is odd that, I don't know. And this is the problem with the U.S. is like, how much does anyone really know? We don't really know, right? So there's senators saying to shoot down the drones. Like that's the quote that's going around lately, right? And Trump is saying shoot down the drones or whatever, right? So it's like, so obviously they don't know anything, right? About the information.
There's no reason to assume that just because they're a senator that they're privy to any particular information, and there's no reason to assume that just because they are making a statement that that's an informed opinion. You could have a senator who is on some security subcommittee who knows exactly what's going on here and isn't allowed to say, and you could have another senator who just wants to make a big splash by going, shoot down the drones, and hoping that'll get him a little bump in, contributions. So
yeah, I think that's a big part of this is we're living in an era where you can easily things take off so fast. It's very difficult to find out who knows what and what is an informed statement or not. So you have to assume most statements are not informed that are not from an official body, right?
Yeah.
So
and you have to assume the statements from an official body are lies.
Of course.
So where does that leave you? With me and Blunty making up bullshit. Right. But there you go. So
we could do it. I was going to say, we could do one other thing here, which is give a couple sets of possibilities, right? One is that there are no drones, okay? That these are all planes or something else. I think at this point that seems unlikely, but there's such a hysteria. I think there's a small percentage, sliver, that's possible.
I think that a large percentage of the sightings are not drones. I think that there were some real sightings.
People are seeing things and thinking they're drones, right?
Because I've seen video of an airplane coming into land and it's kind of coming right towards you and it looks like it's just hovering in the air. And you're like, the fuck is that? Especially at night. Ooh, go ahead.
It could be no drones, right? Mm-hmm. It could be a small amount of drones and, like we're saying, a huge blown out proportion of other things. It could be that somebody saw some planes, thought there were drones, and then people flew drones to look at the drones, and those were the drones people saw, right?
Valid.
It's just so difficult to know, and we have very poor footage coming out of this. And like you said, now at this point, we're going to get doctored footage, so anybody who doesn't see it with their eyes isn't going to be sure that it's real. So, and the other, obviously, there's a bunch more going in the other direction of this is a military plan. They just want to do this blatantly to put UAS down in the public image, right? That's a big one I've heard going lately.
Here's why I don't buy that. I don't think the presumption there is that there are actors in the U.S. government who want to outlaw drones but don't feel that public sentiment is strong enough to do what they want to do. Therefore, they need to gin up, they need to false flag an incident to change public sentiment. I don't think that holds water. I think that the people who want to regulate drones are pretty much succeeding. And so the idea that the motivation here is to change public sentiment about drones is, I don't know. It doesn't ring true to me. I could be wrong, but it doesn't feel right.
Right. And then, I guess then obviously there's a bunch of directions to go conspiracy-wise, right? But I think, the other, general thing in that direction is just that these are some kind of military operation that they don't really care if we know about or not, and they're happy to tell us that they don't know anything about it, and nobody knows anything about it, and they'll just do what they want to do because that's the government, and we don't really have a choice about it, right? Which is a common sentiment, especially in Alabama, I hear all the time from people who are so far away and hearing rumors about it, right?
Yeah.
I think, I don't know. It's just important, obviously, to consider all the options, but I think we know very little, and most of us are not there, and most people there are not seeing anything, right? So it's specifically a group of people who are seeing things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my take, too. The fact that they have the standard navigational markers, red, green, and white. And again, I'm referring I've gone digging for footage, and most of the time I'm just looks like an airplane to me. I don't know. But there are a few videos out there that really, to my, I don't know, untrained expert, whatever you want to say, to my eye, I'm like, oh, that could be a UAS flying overhead. And in all cases, they have markers. And that sort of makes sense because a drone flying at night without lighting, you wouldn't even see it. So, that doesn't mean they're not there, but it does mean there's no video of them. And so, if it was a hostile actor, then you wouldn't expect them to be marked like that because they wouldn't want to be seen. And I know people have made the argument, yeah, it's a hostile actor, but they're trying to pretend to be not hostile. And it's that doesn't make sense. I agree that if there is, the explanation that feels the most likely is that this is some kind of action by a government body, whether it's the military or what. And because, you see people freaking out, but the people who actually, if there were hostile drones over New Jersey, the entities that would be freaking out aren't freaking out. The military is saying, nah, guys, we're all cool. It's all cool. And I don't know, people say, oh, well, maybe they're just trying to quell mass hysteria and it really is hostile. Well, if a drone was going to drop a freaking should avoid getting demonetized. If a drone was going to commit some kind of hostile mass action of harm over a major metropolitan area, and the military was like, nah, guys, it's cool, don't freak out, and then that happened, that would be a disaster. I just don't think the military is that incompetent. So my best explanation, if I were just a betting man, and it's just as bullshit as all the other guesses, but it's mine, so I like it, is that this is some kind of military program or government program. I heard a theory that one of the drones, the drone that was cross-referenced on Reddit, actually, I found the Wikipedia page for it. I can't find the Reddit post that had the photos that cross-referenced it. I wish I could find it. But there was a Reddit post where someone was like, ooh, here's a picture of one of the drones flying overhead. And somebody looked at the features of the drone that were visible and cross-referenced it with, I believe it was this, the Lockheed Martin RQ-170 Sentinel. And then someone said, interesting, one of the things the RQ-170 Sentinel does is it has sensor packages that let it detect radioactivity. And people speculated, and this is my current favorite theory, for what it's worth, speculated that there was some kind of dangerous radiological material in the area, and they were searching for it. And so then that raises the question of why are they only flying at night? Why are they not flying during the day? Don't know. If there was some kind of dangerous radiological material in the area, surely they would be searching 24/7. Surely there would be police going around, knocking on doors and saying, hey, can we search your warehouse? I don't know. There's clearly more to the story. But currently, that it's some kind of official program that cannot be acknowledged to the public, but that is so urgent to do that it must be done over populated areas and with public awareness. That's my best theory. Or aliens. Blunty?
Or there's
aliens?
No drones.
No. We're aliens, Blunty. Tell me, what do you think of that theory? No, we're done being reasonable.
One thing I will say is, do you remember when we talked about this on the news in 2019?
I don't remember that.
I know. I figured I would ask anyway. In Colorado, we did a story about Colorado. There were drones in 2019 and 2020 for about a month and a half that were flying over Colorado and North Colorado in grid patterns.
I do remember that. I do remember that.
Yeah, and guess what? Nobody remembers it now.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I mean, this seems real similar to me. This is just over a populated area instead of a non-populated area.
Yeah.
And back then, the same thing happened. The FAA said, we don't know what you're talking about. The FBI said, we don't know what you're talking about. The police said, we don't know what you're talking about, right? So either these are hysterical sightings, people think they're seeing planes or something, and everybody's associating it with drones, right? Or, there's some stuff going on and we just don't know about it. I mean, I think those two, probably one of those two is the case, right? I feel like that seems to be the world we're living in. But.
What if it is, again, completely in the realm of BS, but, a government program that we're not allowed to tell you about, but that we officially know about. What if it's some kind of new surveillance technology and they're testing it out and they were like, well, we have to test it somewhere. And they just were like, people will see the drones. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. We don't know. That's the bottom line is we don't know. By the way, aliens. Why would aliens have navigational lights? Because the aliens don't understand us, but they're doing their best to integrate and show us that they mean no harm. So they've noticed that all our aircraft have lights on them. So when the aliens come down, they put lights on their aircraft to mimic. It's like mimicry. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think it's aliens. Anyway, keep this in mind. We try to end on a note of reason. A lot of what you're seeing is just absolute nonsense. And please, I've gotten so many emails about this from people who are like, sending me videos. And I'm like, half or more of the videos that I've received about this are clearly just an airplane or a helicopter in the air. Or in one case, it was a guy up on a mountain ridge at night so you can't see the ridge shining a flashlight. Lol. And I know that one because there's video elsewhere on the internet of the guy on the mountain ridge going, lol, look, I got this guy shining a laser at me. Haha, he thinks I'm a UFO. So there's a lot of BS going on. 99% of it probably is. And then even when you're getting statements from someone in authority, doesn't mean that they know. And it doesn't mean that they're telling you the whole truth. So you got to really have your information filters and your skepticism up and try and operate on things that are facts, which is difficult to do. Or, hey, how about just maybe it's nothing? Who knows? And even if it is something, maybe there's nothing you can do about it. So just meh. All right. Enough about aliens. Any other comments that really need? Who do you think is behind it? The government. That's my best guess. It is the military or some government agency doing something that they can't or won't tell us about, but that they have to do in such a visible way for some reason that we may never know. That's my theory. Okay. Now let's do Super Chats. We're going to go right to Super Chats. Oh, there we go. We'll start with this $50 Super Chat from Rip and Rich. I saw a pink Super Chat and assumed it was Yosferos. I was wrong. Sorry, Rip and Rich. And sorry for taking so long to get to your question. You're living the dream. Thank you. I think I am. I agree. Any chance you would give me some feedback or first impressions on my new RC Hobbies website for creating builds? RC Feed. I don't know. RC Feed. So I know you can't, I guess it's rcfeed.com. I know you can't put a link in the chat, so I believe this is it. Feedback and first impressions on my website. All right. I warned you, I'm going to be a poopy pants. But that's what you want. You didn't ask me that question for me to, like, stroke you. And if you thought I was going to just be like, oh, it looks really good. It feels so good. That's not my style. First impression. I don't know what this website is. Welcome to RC Feed. It's a bunch of pictures. Some of them are drawings. Some of them are pictures of real aircraft. I don't really... I've got to your website. There are no clear, like, what is this? Okay, how about I go to About? Okay, find. RC Feed is a place. Okay. Our mission. Great. I'm going to go out on a limb here. What's the frick, Blunty? I'm blanking because RC Feed is in my head. What's the website where there are a bunch of builds, drone builds? I'm just blanking because now I can't get the word RC Feed out of my head. Come on, it's not drone part picker. It's the other one.
Rotor builds.
Rotor builds. Thank you, Blunty. If we go to rotorbuilds.com, okay, and again, I'm going out on a limb here because I haven't looked at rotorbuilds.com, but I know it's a good site. Rotor builds, FPV part lists, and build logs. Oh, okay, that's what this is. It's a website of FPV part lists and build logs. Okay, now I have something to latch onto, but here I kind of have nothing to latch onto. Welcome to RC Feed. There's a sweepstakes coming soon. Okay, fine. So I start poking around. We got builds, okay? Let's pick a build. So is this basically just rotor builds? Got photos, part list. Yeah, is this basically just rotor builds? So I guess this is a build list. This is a build video?
Yes.
Okay, we got a build video. It's incredibly tiny and embedded. I would never watch this like this. Honestly, you may as well make it pop open a window. Is this a build? This is not a build video. So what we've got here is what's meaningful about this. This is the AR Wing Pro. I have some pictures. I have a parts list. But if we look at rotor builds, every entry. Okay, fine. We have a backstory. We don't need a backstory, but we've got comments about the build. We basically have an article written about it. Now, I've only looked at one thing. That's better. This is way better. This is way better. Even still, like... Even still...
All user submitted, right?
Yeah, but I feel like rotor builds... Okay, here's the same thing. I'm just as annoyed. I had an impression that rotor builds had a little bit of moderation. And I have, when I've gone to rotor builds to look at a build, it usually... No, I'm proving myself wrong here. Okay. I had the impression that rotor builds tended to have more sort of fleshed out articles. Of the ones that I've picked, several of them have been the same. So I guess that's an equal criticism of both. And I guess what I would say is if you really wanted to improve the quality, which I guess is why you asked, you would have to find a balance between like saying to a user who submits, hey, can you flesh this out so that you have higher quality content versus, well, you need any content at all, right? Yeah. It really seems like you've just made a clone of rotorbuilds.com. You got, I can click. Sometimes I can click and it shows me other builds that have that part. Other times it looks like that's not the case. Here we've got a direct AliExpress link. Yeah. Feed. That's the feed. Why do we have a link to the feed if the front page is the feed? So, okay. It feels like what we've got here is a less mature clone of rotorbuilds.com. So I would say if you want to make it better, clone our RotorBuilds better. Look at all the features of RotorBuilds, the things they're doing that you're not doing, and continue to steal them. Yeah. I don't know. So like RotorBuilds, I can pick apart. I can say, okay, show me all the builds that use these propellers. RotorBuilds maintains their own database of parts. How the fuck do they do that? What are they using for their backend? I have this exact problem for my website. I got to talk to the developer of RotorBuilds. Yeah, interesting. Anyway, yeah, you're just missing a lot of functionality. But the real question is, what are you going to do better than RotorBuilds? Because cloning RotorBuilds, great. Now what? RotorBuilds already exists. It already is doing a good job. You have to do, if you really want to compete with them, you have to do everything they do as good as they do, and some things better. Now, the reality is that if you do some things better enough, you can be worse at other things and still get away with it. But here's the thing. RotorBuilds has already given you the template. They are the baseline. So their users are happy with the things they do well. The best thing you can do is do everything they do, and they've given you the template for you to now borrow, copy, clone, however you want to put it. And then find things that you can do better than them. Right now, you're doing like a few of the things that they do, I guess, as good as they do it with the builds and the parts list and the pictures. But there are many things that they do that you don't do at all. And so I'm not sure why people would be compelled to come over here. All right. I hope that was the feedback you were looking for. You paid for it. And, you know, I'm going to give you, or as Pacific Source says, do something completely different. Okay. Yeah. Anybody out there do web development? Here's a problem I'm having. My problem that I'm having is I want to be able to have a page with a list of products. Blunty, put this on the live stream clips with Bardwell is looking to hire a web developer. I'm serious. I'll start over so the clip is interrupted. Does anybody out there do web development? Here's a problem that I'm having. On my website, I need to have an inventory of parts like this, right? Flight controllers, etc. And I need to be able to put those parts on my pages like this, right? And I can't find a backend that does that in the way that I want. So like all of the backends that do what I'm showing you here are basically Shopify backends. They're e-commerce backends. And this also looks like an e-commerce backend. And an e-commerce backend, you've got the part, you've got the price, you've got the description, and then they're all divided into categories and maybe subcategories. So if we go to racedayquads.com, their whole inventory, we say, show me all electronics. Got it. Show me all 20 by 20 stacks. And boom, it gives you a list of 20 by 20 stacks. But if you look at my webpage, I've got a little essay here, and then I've got a list of parts. And the list of parts is not show me all the motors. I've manually selected each of these parts to appear here. So what I need is the ability to have an inventory of parts and to drag and drop those parts into a page and boop, have it show up like a content block. and to intermingle that with text and essay, which an e-commerce backend doesn't do that. An e-commerce backend just wants to show me a list of products that fit in this category with no text, and the products are not statically laid out. They're just searching. And I currently have a developer who is supposed to be making me a website that has this functionality, and I'm not convinced he's going to pull it off, and it's kind of embarrassing how much money I'm going to pay him to ultimately not pull it off. I hope I'm wrong about that. But if anybody out there does web development and is like, no, Bardwell, so my website is WordPress backend. If anybody is like, here, there's a plugin that does exactly what you need. 2 more minutes on this for people who are bored about me talking about my website and pandering to the audience to try and get a job interview, basically, for my own personal uses. What I would really like is the ability to say, insert product, boop, and here's a list of products that I've created. And I click on the product and boom, there's a content block. And I can put that content block anywhere on the page, and I'm building a web page, but that element is sort of dynamically populated from the back end. And I can't find anything that does that. And I have no idea. I thought I could pay someone to make it, but yeah, Valenti.
I'm going to ask questions that Chad has been asking.
Hit me.
So why does it need to come from a backend?
Because
why do you need an inventory of parts instead of just listing the parts like you do?
Because say I've got a product, it's the SpeedyBee F3, and it's one of my recommended flight controllers for 5-inch builds. Well, it may be on another page as well. So I need that content to be populated on the page from a central location so that if the content appears in multiple locations, it's all synced. The other thing is, let's say I change a product link or I have a typo in the description. I want to make that change in one place on the back end, and then it populates everywhere else on the site that the product appears. The other thing is, one more thing, good question, gets to the heart of the matter. I want to be able to say, hey, here are the new products that have been added to the site. Well, if I've just statically added a text block to a page, that does not exist as a product in some meta sense, right? So I want to be able to say, here are the products that people clicked on the most this week. And so I need to have the product exist as an entity so that I can do those things.
Okay, what backend are you currently using? WordPress?
WordPress. Kinsta is my web hosting, and WordPress is my backend.
Are you okay with moving to different backends, or are you trying to stay on WordPress?
I'm open to that. I would have to be convinced that like people have suggested going to a Shopify backend and customizing a Shopify theme to not show the purchase link and not show the pricing. But then I feel like Shopify is not really tailored toward, I am going to manually edit this page. I'm going to type a little mini essay, and then I'm going to have my products. I feel like Shopify is really bad at making a website, and it's good at making a store. And I want mostly a website with just these little elements that are like a store. So I would need to be convinced that that was good for the whole website and not just good for this one thing. But yes, I'm open to moving off of WordPress. As long as at the end of the day, I can still manage the website, yeah. Like what's someone proposing? Anything specific?
I don't know. A bunch of people say you don't need to move. A bunch of people say you do need to move. A bunch of people say you can do it with this or that or the other, or,
I've searched and searched for WordPress plugins that would do what I want. And there are some that seem to come close. And again, if you're a developer who is like, I know exactly what you need, I will pay you to do this, but you have to actually do it.
How can they reach you? Joshua Bardwell?
JB at JoshuaBardwell.com is the best way.
And the header is just like, hey, I've got web dev for you or something.
Yeah, I'll get that. Yeah, for sure. Any other questions people are having that seem relevant?
So you mentioned drag and drop earlier. Is that important to you?
It doesn't have to be drag and drop. Like if you look at my back end, I'm not going to pull up the back end of my website because that'll be cumbersome and probably a bad idea. But like I'll go, it's all drag and drop, WYSIWYG, whatever. It's not. It's like I'll right click and go add content block, text block, boonk, and now there's a text block, right? Add content block, image, etc., right? So what I would ideally like to do is add content block, product. And then I get a list of all the products that I've created in the database. And I'll be like, iFlight Nazgul, enter. And I pick the product, boom, and now I have a block. And now, just like all of the other content on my website, on the back end, I could kind of drag it around and place it and put it where I want. But it's that content, right? I could do it now. WordPress supports a thing called global content blocks, where you basically have a block of content that no matter where you put it on any page, it's the same. And if you edit it, and I use those, but like at the end of the day, there's nowhere I can go and look and say, so here's the other thing. When I go to update products, I want to just go look at the products, be like, okay, I need to check these links. I don't want to have to dig through the web page trying to find the products. I want to be able to manage them in a database way. And that's another thing I'm looking for. Go ahead.
I believe that's most of it. I mean, the variety of answers you're getting is part of why this is probably an issue to get done, right? Because like everybody thinks they have a way, and it's a different program. You know?
And the problem with this, and all respect to the one guy who's going to get it right, I've been down this road before. I've been working on this for like 6 months. And I've had people say, what you need is X. And it turns out that they don't fully understand the problem, or it turns out X doesn't do what I need. They just heard about X and thought it did. So if you legitimately can do what I want, you'll save my freaking life, and I will pay a reasonable, like I say reasonable. By reasonable, I mean I'm not going to cheap out on you. I understand that this is a business and you're a professional, and I will pay market rate for someone to actually freaking do this for me. Like, yeah. Like, right, I'll just be straight. I'll be straight. Right now, I've got a guy from Upwork who is working on the site. I paid him $2,000 so far to come up with the, I forget what it's called. It's where they don't make you a website, but they just show you what your website is going to look like, right? The basic layout, the graphics, etc., right? You know, I've already paid him for that. And he's working on the back end. And he delivered what he thought was what I wanted. And I said, you're missing the key feature that I actually asked you to do, which is the dynamic products in the database. And he was like, oh, fuck. You really wanted that? Well, I guess I could do that, but you're going to need to pay me some more money. I was like, the hell I am. Like, that was in the original statement of work. But like, I've already paid him $2,000 just for the initial layout. So like I have the budget to make this real. I just need a developer who will actually give me what I'm asking for. And if you could not have to go back and forth with me a million times, not understanding what I want, that would be even better. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, people think that was too much money for that. Trust me, I got a lot of quotes. And I don't know, like, you're like, well, my cousin could do it for $500. I'm sure. Professional website developers, that's, the quotes were just, you know, anyway, that's what they're charging. And I was like, fine, I'm going to pay a professional to make me a professional website that won't look like I cobbled it together on MySpace. And I will finally have a professional website. And if it costs me $2,000 to get some guy to do it for me, fine, I will bite the bullet and do it. So, anyway, yeah, $2,000 is like 2 to 3 days of work for an actual developer. Exactly. Anyway, all right, enough. I think that's it. Hit me up if you think you could do this. I would like to get it done. My website is I'm just going to be honest with you guys. My website is embarrassingly out of date. And part of the reason it's out of date is it has been such a pain in the ass for me to keep it up to date that I have kind of just stalled on it. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to hire somebody. We're going to redo my website. It's going to be amazing. That is dragging out, and I just don't know what to do. I'm at the point where I'm literally thinking I'm just going to fire this guy. I'm going to pay him whatever I need to pay him for the work he's done, and I'm just going to redo the whole goddamn thing statically in WordPress, and it's going to kill me. And this is my last ditch before I just do that. Anyway, enough about me. Let's get on with the super chats. Right, we were doing super chats. So here's a £5 super chat from Nick P. Apart from losing VTX and control link at the same time, what are the benefits of changing from using a DJI FPV to an ELRS Boxer? That's the main one. The Boxer will have more range than the DJI system, probably, under many conditions. However, if you're using the G2 or the G3, that doesn't matter. If you're using the RC2 or the RC3, that doesn't matter because the RC2 and the RC3 send their signal through the goggles to the air unit. Whereas the original RC1, the big black controller, it bound to the air unit. With the RC1, you could lose link on the goggles and not the controller. Here's why that matters, though. In the case of the RC2 and the RC3, the range of the control link and the video link is the same because it's all going through the goggles anyway, right? So there's two arguments here. One is that if you lose video, you keep control and you can like fly out of it. And the other slightly subtly different is that you may have more range on video versus control, and that may benefit you in some way. As you pointed out, that's not the case. The other benefit, I guess, of going to something like ELRS, if you take range just completely out of the picture, is that ELRS can do some things that DJI can't do. ELRS, you could manage, well, I was going to say you could manage the video transmitter, but if you're using DJI, that doesn't matter. There are some things that ELRS can do, like with telemetry and stuff, that, yeah, not a lot. I think the big advantage of the Boxer is the ergonomics, though. I just don't really like the ergonomics of the DJI RC. I don't think it has enough switches. It's a little bit of a hassle to use, and so I personally would choose the Boxer because of the ergonomics, more so than the actual control link. What motors and 5-inch flight motors and 5-in-1 flight controller for a 3-inch 4S build? Ooh. There's not very many 5-in-1 flight controllers, are there? In fact, the only one I can think of is the Happy Model X12. Folks in the chat, is there another 5-in-1 flight controller? It has video transmitter and receiver on board. 5-in-1. Is there another one? This is a 12 amp. So, to my mind, I think a 12 amp ESC is iffy for a 3-inch 4S build. I think that it may be a no-go. This doesn't matter because it only supports 2S. So never mind. This is 2S only anyway. It doesn't matter. Beta FPV Air 5-in-1. That's not a 4S. Yeah, that's a 1S. I don't know if you're going to... Is there any 5-in-1 that supports 4S? That's a 5 amp. That's going to be a 1S. That's no good anyway. 1S 5 amp. I'm not sure that there's any 5-in-1 that takes 4S. I think you're out of luck here. Does it need to be an AIO? He said 5-in-1. He said 5-in-1, which implies all-in-one. Yeah, I think you're out of luck, man. I think what most people would do is get a 25mm 4-in-1 with a separate receiver or with a separate video transmitter. That's how I would see that.
You could go old school, right, and use a Beck, but
use a Beck.
Like you drop the 4S down to like 2S for the FC, right? Oh, it's an AIO, right? So you can't.
It's an AIO,
ESCs
so
like
yeah, with ESC that wouldn't work.
You'd have to find a Beck that was like 20 amps or something.
I mean, sure, but I don't think that's how most people would. That's not realistic. Yeah. Yeah. So I think as far as motors go, toothpick, motors, 1204, 1203. This is for toothpick builds, though, the light builds. I think Ciati likes like a 1608. Yeah, no, not a 1608. Dang it. Where's Ciati? What motor does Ciotti like? 1806, 1608? That's not right. It's like a 16 millimeter motor. Vicarious, $2,000 was just for the cosmetic design and layout. The back end work is more. He sees was more. People who are like, you got hosed, that's too much money. I don't know if you've hired a professional web developer recently. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to argue with you about it. Not surface motors. Fuck you. Motors. Can I do it by size? 16 millimeter. Oh, you guys can't see what I'm doing. Yeah, like, I think like for a motor, like a 1604. Yeah, that's what I was trying to think of. 1604 in the like 4,000 kV range, I think is what you're looking at for 4S. Yeah. I'd be looking for like a motor, like a 16 millimeter motor in the 4,000-ish kV range. 1507, fine choice. Yeah. Dave S. Yes, the developer didn't do what I asked for. And he said, okay, give me a few days, I'll do it. And he said, can you pay me more money? And I said, no, how about I fire you? And he said, okay, you sure you can't pay me a little bit more money? And I said, how much more? And he said a number. And I said, ha 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 ha. I said, my position is that what you didn't do was in the original statement of work that we agreed on. Therefore, there's no reason for me to pay you more money to do it. And honestly, at this point, I'm thinking of just canceling the whole thing and trying to not pay you any more money at all for the work you did do. And he went, okay, I'll see you in a few days. I can do this. And I went, at this point, I'm not even sure I want you to, but I don't feel justified in just firing you and getting cold feet on the project. So I didn't. Okay. I'm building a Flyfish Volador 3.5, which with analog configuration, what do you recommend for freestyle aggressive flying? In terms of motors, same. The 1604s I talked about, pretty good. I mean, that's... Ciotti says, oh, good, Ciotti's here. I always rely on him when it comes to stuff in the 3-inch size class. He's the master of 3 inches. Ha! That joke never gets old, does it, Ciotti? I'm sorry, I apologize. 300 grams 4S, 1604 or 1804. And he's being kind. He's being kind. He only put 1604 there because he heard me already say 1604, and he's too polite to just disagree with me. He means 1804. And he was just like, yeah, I guess Bardwell said 1604. I'll let it slide. I'm pretty sure he likes 1604 or 1804 best. 1806? We're getting chunky now. Anyway, that's where I would go. Here's Akinator. Thank you for 5 Polish slotty. I don't see any question from Akinator. Here we go. I got it. Here's another 25 slotty. Shit. Is the fucking stream glitching out? Sorry about that, guys. I'm seeing some dropped packets. I hope the stream hasn't been glitching. Let's try it again. Nope. Hold on. You know, I bought this expensive router that's supposed to do load balancing so I can stream without my effing live stream dropping out when Dropbox is moving. Now it's freaking... Is it Dropbox is fucking me up? Okay, let's see if that fixes it. I'm stopping my Dropbox. Sorry, guys. I have a problem. My drone is binding with my controller, but it's not showing any inputs. It's an Ishi Novice 1. Can you help me? Akinator, I hate to do this to you, man, especially because you bought a super chat. This kind of troubleshooting problem requires a level of back and forth where, like, I ask you a question, you tell me an answer, I ask you another question, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's really very difficult to do that on a live stream just because of the delay. Strongly recommend you email me, jb@joshuabardwell.com. jb@joshuabardwell.com. Email me and we'll try and work through it. But I appreciate the donation. CATV, thank you for a $10 super chat. Building my first drone, the Walksnail VTX has a short. I'm using a smoke stopper, 90% sure I didn't cook it myself. What will happen? CATV, are you sure that it has a short? Because just because your smoke stopper trips doesn't mean it has a short. A smoke stopper trips when current flows. Now, a short circuit causes current to flow. But also, everything else, normal operation causes current to flow. The difference is that a short circuit causes a dangerous amount of current to flow that fries something. So you could have a situation where your VTX is drawing just enough power to kick you over the 1 amp limit on your smoke stopper. Maybe. It's not necessarily true that you have a short circuit just because your smoke stopper tripped. So one thing to do would be to wire just the VTX up to the smoke stopper. Take the VTX, don't wire the VTX to the flight controller. Wire the VTX to an external battery or a power supply and run it through the smoke stopper. This is going to require some alligator clips and stuff. And see if the VTX by itself trips the smoke stopper, because it shouldn't. That's a thought. The smoke stopper didn't trip. I did a continuity test on the pins and there was no resistance. Ooh. I mean, at that point, if it came from the factory like that, how did you know? Why did you do the continuity test? There's more to this story.
I mean, presumably the order of events is he tried to use it with a smoke stopper. The smoke stopper tripped. He pulled it off. The smoke stopper didn't trip, so he checked it with the meter and realized that it had continuity. I don't know enough about electronics to know. Is it possible he did it backwards and there was a diode, or I guess it's a short, not a open?
Yeah.
I don't know. This is the kind of thing. This is why I like having a bench power meter, like a power supply.
Power supply, yeah.
Because on a bench power supply, you could just hook it up to the bench power supply and set the amp limit, and you'll know if it works or not. You don't have to worry about testing. You can just test literally by powering it.
Yeah. CATV says, with the VTX unconnected, the flight controller 10-volt rail showed 10 volts. With it connected, it showed 0 volts. That's a dead short, for sure. I don't know how the video transmitter didn't fry. But yeah, that sounds like a dead short to me. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to tell you other than go back to Cadix and get it replaced. Could you have a bent pin inside the plug? That could cause it. Bent pin? I don't know. You probably have caught that. It sounds like you've been pretty thorough. Yeah. Odds. What are the odds they'll replace it? I mean, hopefully pretty good. But I couldn't say. I don't work for them. Bummer. Sucks. I wish we had been able to do some troubleshooting and to find out that it wasn't broken and you just were misunderstanding or made some mistake, because then at least we could set you straight and everything would be fine. It sounds like you have damaged hardware. Binkoro FPV. Blunty, this one's for you, buddy. I got this question in an email and I didn't know the answer, and then I was just like, I'm tired, and I didn't reply. Can I use a remote ID module that is registered for a Part 107 drone on another drone for recreational purposes? Can we break this question down? Because I think there's some assumptions here that people may not understand, and then maybe we'll have an actual answer.
Correct. So the ultimate rule is that you cannot add a remote ID module to a Part 107 drone to satisfy remote ID requirements, because that drone is considered home built. And home built, in the definition of the rule for remote ID, specifies it must be recreational or for educational purposes. So the problem is that the way the rule reads and the way the FAA interprets the rule is that remote ID must be built into the drone, because otherwise it would be home built and then be recreational or educational only. This is very stupid. This is because of how it's written, but this is the interpretation that is used. At the FPV Freedom Coalition, we tell people that's really dumb. You should just put a remote ID module on your drone and fly it for 107, because you're satisfying the rule as it's intended, not as it's written. And it's very, very unlikely that anybody would get you in trouble or have a problem with you broadcasting remote ID on purpose from your home-built drone to try to satisfy the requirements. That being said, if you are doing that and you have a remote ID module that is registered for Part 107 in the FAA website under that drone, and you want to put that module on a recreational drone, my advice to you would be, if you go into the recreational side, add the drone, put the recreational, put the RID module in the registration on your recreational side. If it accepts it, take that module and slap it on the other drone, and you're good to go.
I can tell you. So the crux of this question is that when registering a drone as a hobbyist, well, when registering with the FAA as a hobbyist, you register yourself and you are given an FAA number, and then you put that FAA number on all of your drones, and you do not have to register individual drones. When operating as a 107 operator, you must register each individual drone. Each individual drone gets a unique identification number, and that number goes on the drones. And so the implication then is that remote ID will also be unique for each individual drone. Is that accurate, Blunty?
Yes, it should be, but there's nothing in the rule that says you can't unregister and re-register it live.
I can tell you even more. And I don't know, I may be about to get in trouble, but this Roku remote ID module, naturally, as a good boy, law-abiding citizen who always flies according to FAA regulations, I've registered each drone that I fly certainly before I release the video where I'm flying it, and ideally before I fly it. And for the last, however many drones I've reviewed since I got this module, I've just put this number in. Oh, probably shouldn't put that serial number on stream. Oh, well. I've just put the same serial number in for all of them, and the website has accepted it. It has not said, oh, this module is registered to a different drone. Does that new information for you? Does that add anything to the question?
I've just never tried it, but that makes perfect sense to me. I can't imagine they would actually do the work to make the database block the other numbers. So
yeah, so they've let me do it. Let me just make sure this is the 107. Drone owners and pilots. Part 107. This is part 107, so clearly part 107 inventory. I don't give a fuck. I don't even care. Wait, why do I have stuff in my cart? I didn't check this out? Holy shit. Okay, well, hold on. I gotta pay for these registrations. See, I told you I wasn't lying. I register these drones before I fly them. Because all I need is somebody from the FAA to be going like, hey, Bardwell flew this drone and didn't register it. Never mind the fact that there could be a different person operating as the pilot in command, so who knows? But, yeah. I should still pay for this registration.
Yeah, so somebody in chat asked, does that technically mean no home-built drones are eligible for commercial work? Yes, by the letter of the law, that is what that means. And the reason is because home-built means you build it and you're not a manufacturer. So there is a way around this, and it's very annoying, but it is technically possible. If you want to use your FPV drone for commercial work, you need to register as a manufacturer with the FAA. Then you need to file a with the FAA, and that will get you as a manufactured drone.
Declaration of compliance?
Declaration of compliance, correct.
Yeah. And then there's all kinds of record keeping requirements related to that. You have to serialize your drones. You have to blah blah blah. But
now,
you have to keep
what
records.
If that will be checked? Who's going to know? There's a lot of questions there, right? You could just do the paperwork, but not actually do the back end work, and that's on you and your risk, right? There's a bunch of different ways to think about this because we're also telling people to slap a drone on a module on a drone that's not really technically correct. So there's a lot of ways you could go about this. And
this really matters because there are lots of professionals who are doing work with self-built drones, and by that I mean, if you build a Catalyst Machine Works Cinelifter, or I don't know, I want to name manufacturers, but it's if I were to say Lumineer, it's possible that Lumineer is registered as a manufacturer with the FAA and they're selling their stuff, but they would have to have standard remote ID on it then, and I don't know how they could comply with that. Be that all as it said, a lot of commercial work is done with drones that aren't like DJI drones off the shelf, self-built drones, and there's just no way to legally do that. You're always going to be sort of finding some loophole or skirting some rule, and it's just a question of what you think you can get away with. So, all right. Is latency good enough on the Walksnail Goggles L? I didn't like it. I thought it was high. I found it distracting. Other people have said they're okay with it. That's my opinion, though. How are you? I'm good. Thank you for the donation. Goggle L versus DJI Neo 3. What's the best to start digital? The question there is whether you want to start with the DJI ecosystem or the Walksnail ecosystem. The goggles are going to be, you're not going to pick an ecosystem based on the goggles. You're going to pick the goggle based on the ecosystem, in my opinion. Before the DJI O4 Pro and the O4 Lite were, well, they're not released, but they have been strongly hinted at. And if those rumors turn out to be true, like the DJI, the performance, the rumored performance of those systems and the rumored existence of a small version that runs off 1 to 3S voltage takes a lot of the wind out of Walksnail's sales. Say that 3 times fast. Because one of Walksnail's big advantages has been the existence of a 1S and a light VTX that are smaller and lighter for smaller aircraft. I think that a lot of people, especially once the O4 releases, assuming the O4 lives up to the rumored specs and capabilities, I think a lot of people are going to see the DJI as the way to go. That's my personal take.
Can you confirm or deny if you have a O4 NDA currently?
I cannot confirm or deny that.
All right.
There you go. Forever a beginner. On a TrueX quad, are props in the view of a GoPro? Often, yes, but it depends on your up tilt. Right? If you have low up tilt, the GoPro will usually see the props. If you have higher up tilt, the GoPro will not see the props. The other thing is, if you're doing 16:9 widescreen, you've chopped off the top and bottom of the sensor. But if you're doing super view, you have the bottom of the sensor, top and bottom of the sensor in frame, and you'll be more likely to see the props. So if you're really concerned about that, you should get a dead cat. Love your content. I'm new to FPV. Would you recommend the Avata 2 or the GetRC Mark V Digital? Completely different animals. Completely different animals. Either of them are good at what they do. The Avata is much worse at freestyle. It's much worse at performance flying. It's not the worst at it. You could do some flippy flops with an Avata, but it's going to have much smaller performance envelope and be much worse when you crash it. It's going to be much more likely to break. On the other hand, the GetRC doesn't have the cinematic capabilities. It doesn't have return to home. It doesn't have loiter in place. It doesn't have motion controller. It doesn't have a camera gimbal that can go up and down. It doesn't have all the DJI wonderfulness that people buy DJI for. So it really just is a question of what you're looking for out of the aircraft. They're very different animals. And frankly, if you're on the fence between the Avata 2 and the GetRC Mark V, with all due respect and with as little condescension as my arrogant self can muster, I'd like to say that you're not ready to make a purchasing decision because you don't actually understand what those aircraft can do. It'd be like if somebody said, "Hey, I'm thinking of buying a car. Now, which is better for me, a Miata or a Ford F-150?" Like if you said, which is better, a Dodge Ram or a Ford F-150? Ah, okay. So you're looking to buy a truck and you're just not sure which truck to get. But if you asked, which is better for me, a Miata or a Ford F-150? It's like you're not ready to swipe the credit card yet because you don't understand why that question actually kind of doesn't make sense. And so I would say do more research until you fully understand what the Avata does and what the Mark V does and what they're good at. And then whichever of those things you want, that'll be the one to buy. That should be a really straightforward buying decision for most people. But not everybody. Like maybe you're just not sure if you want an FPV drone or if you want a DJI style drone. And in that case, the question makes a little bit of sense. Okay. Alrighty, that's it for Super Chats. We're caught up and we're going to go back to the regular chats. The GX12 is amazing and almost suspiciously cheap. What's the feeling there will be a more deluxe version? Like 100%. I mean, RadioMaster has released like a max version of basically all of their radios. And the max version usually has upgraded gimbals and metal CNC parts, whether that's just the buttons or the case or whatever. Assuming that the GX12 is popular, and I think the GX12 is going to be very popular. I actually have a GX12. My review is recorded but not released because I'm bad at my job. Fair enough. I think that the GX12 will be popular, and I think it's essentially guaranteed that RadioMaster will release an upgraded version of it with like metal CNC buttons. As far as the gimbals go, the gimbals are already metal CNC, so I don't know how they could upgrade them, but maybe they would, and I have a feeling that's already in the works. Different colors, like the RadioMaster Crush. Yeah.
So I know one of the main things I saw people asking about was, do you feel like the quality of the gimbals is at or above AGO1s? It's a folding gimbal, right? That's the big draw of the new gimbal. And it's now the sensor has been moved because it's folding onto the board. That's what I was told.
Yeah. So as far as the folding gimbal goes, if you're uncertain, it works just like the Tango 2 Pro. You pull up on it, and then it folds over. In my opinion, it's better than the Tango 2 Pro, just the folding mechanism. The Tango 2 Pro, the folding mechanism, if you just kind of tweedle it a little, boop, it pops back out again. At least that's my experience. This seems pretty solid. Like whenever I put my Tango 2 Pro in a backpack or something with the gimbals folded, by the time I take it out again, they've popped out. I haven't obviously had this long enough to say, but it feels like way more secure. And so the folding is pretty good. As far as the quality of the gimbals, like I say, it's hard to say. You're really nitpicking. I think the AGO ones feel a little better, but it could just be that if I just tweak the spring tension and the stick ends a little bit, they would be similar. To be honest with you, like as the stick feel itself, I mean, a brand new set of Hall effect gimbals feels pretty good. It has just a little bit less of a damped feel than the AGO one, but the main place I see the difference is at the edge of the movement, where like you bang it all the way up, and the metal frame and the metal CNC parts keep it sort of locked in, and it's not got a lot of drift and wiggle at the end points. And this does have that characteristic. I feel like it's on par with the AGO one, based just on the very few hours of time I've had with it, whereas the AGO ones I have a lot of time with. As far as the sensor goes, I have concerns. The Tango 2 has the same sort of sensor on the board, and the advantage is that the gimbal can be lifted off the board separately, and they say that the advantage is the gimbal is lower profile, but the radio isn't lower profile, so I don't know what the point of that is. But anyway. The Tango 2 has a massive issue with calibration of the gimbals. I know people who work and for their job they use the Tango 2 at their company. Okay, so these people have however many pilots. Let's say they have tens of pilots working at their company, and they're all using the Tango 2. So they have 20 or 30 Tango 2s. And sometimes I get emails from them, and like they're like, my gimbals are effed up. They have to recalibrate the gimbal. Sometimes if they're like just flying every day for a week, they have to recalibrate the gimbals sometimes twice a week, you know? Just because temperature change or the gimbal got knocked around or whatever. And then the Tango gimbal doesn't recenter, and the endpoints are off. Mostly it's recentering. Or you get into a situation where, like, as you raise the throttle, the yaw axis goes, right? So the yaw doesn't stay centered as you raise the throttle, even though the stick is staying centered. And then you recalibrate the gimbal, and it's fine. And I believe that all of these issues are because they're using a single sensor on the board to detect the two axes. And it means it's very sensitive to accurate calibration. That's why on the Tango 2, when you do the calibration, it says calculating constants. And you have to do the thing where you take the stick and you go dunk, 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 dunk. You don't, with the Tango 2, you don't just do left, right, up, down, center, and you're done. Now on the RadioMaster GX12, it has a normal calibration procedure, left, right, up, down, center, and you're done. And it will be fine. We don't know. It's still too new. But, like, I want to put this frickin' thing in the freezer or the fridge and see if it loses calibration, and do the same thing for an AGO 1. Actually, I probably should do that. That would be a great addition to the video. Because I know on the Tango, the gimbals go out of calibration all the time, and I'm worried that the fact that the GX12 has gone to a single sensor on the board will mean it does the same thing. And I don't know if that's a deal breaker, because the GX12 is very tempting in so many other ways. And even with the Tango, well, you just recalibrate the sticks and it's kind of a pain in the ass, but then it's done and you're good to go for a little while. But I'm not sure that was the right decision. I'm not sure I agree with that decision. Okay. Is Flywoo a reliable website? Yeah. I mean, like, I can't vouch for everyone who's ever bought from Flywoo, but in general, yeah, it's a reliable website. They're not just some shady fly-by-night Chinese company. They're a normal shady fly-by-night Chinese company. They're one of the less shady Chinese companies who are less likely to screw you over if something goes wrong, like your shipment doesn't arrive or whatever. But they're still a Chinese company. So someone out there is mad because they screwed them. Is there any loss in performance putting a folding pocket antenna on a boxer? That's an interesting question. I don't know the answer. You're removing one connector. You're removing the SMA connector, which should get just a little bit less loss. My gut feeling is that the pocket antenna is probably lower quality than the default antenna, the stock antenna on the boxer. But I don't have like numbers to prove that, so I don't know. Can you copy throttle information to the S1 pot to also use channel 3, allowing throttle with the S1 pot? Yes. Yeah, sure. Can you allow the pots to trim the aircraft? Yeah. What you would do is in the mixer screen, you would add the S1 pot to the throttle channel. And what I would recommend you do is you also reduce the weight to like 10% or 20%, because if you ram that pot all the way to the end, you don't want to go full throttle. You just want it to trim the throttle a little, but just go to the mixer screen, add a new line underneath the throttle, and make the source the S1 pot and the weight some number less than 100, and then test it thoroughly. Do you think it's still advantageous to buy a Tango 2 with the LRS module for $200 in today's market? No. The only person who should buy a Tango 2 is a person who is flying Crossfire as their primary RF system. The Tango 2 can have an ELRS module put on the back of it, but at that point, if you fly ELRS, I would buy an ELRS radio because, yeah, if you fly primarily Crossfire and you really want a radio with a built-in Crossfire module, Tango 2 is a solid choice. Even though the gimbal calibration thing is annoying, it's not a deal breaker, and it's a good radio. But if you're going to be running ELRS, then you already have a module hanging off the back of the Tango 2. Why not buy an ELRS radio? Which I think that there are radios out there that are better radios than the Tango 2, with the exception that one thing the Tango 2 has really well done is that it's very compact and has good ergonomics for a compact radio. So that would be the person who would prefer the Tango 2. A person who flies Crossfire as their primary or Crossfire as their secondary, but highly values that compact form factor. All my quads have the EP2 receivers, and I frequently get telemetry loss notifications. Should I move away from ceramic antennas? Tito, the first thing I would do would be to go to a lower packet rate. If you're running at 500 hertz, go to 250 hertz, go to 100 hertz, whatever, and see if that fixes it for you. The other thing is you may reconsider how you're mounting that receiver if you're putting it in a way, like sometimes if you put the Express Alerts receiver like in the front of the quad behind the camera, it has more sort of airspace. Whereas if you put it in the back, maybe it's like more sort of tucked in with stuff around it, and that can help. Ultimately, yes, moving away from the ceramic antennas will give you better range, both because the ceramic antenna itself is not very efficient, and because moving the antenna outside of the frame will give you a better coverage. Whew. I have a whoop that I built. It flew fine last night, but today it has no VTX parameters and I can't find a cable that recognizes the board. You can't find a USB cable that lets you connect to it? I'm sorry. I think I mean, if you can't connect to the flight controller with USB, yeah, go ahead, Blunty.
Hold DFU.
Yeah, so the next step is hold down the bootloader button and plug in USB and try to get it to flash using DFU mode. And if you can't get it to DFU mode, even by running Immersion or Impulse RC Driver Fixer app, if you can't get it to DFU mode, then and you're sure the USB cable is not a problem, I think it's dead. So I don't know.
Yeah, there was a thing that was happening for a while with loop boards where you would lose too low of battery power and it would wipe the config. And
Yes.
I wonder if this is somehow wiped in a way you can't connect. That's still my only guess.
Okay, so yeah, it was the Happy model flight controllers. This was a while ago. I don't think this issue still exists, but if you went below 3.0 volts and you just like killed the battery all the way down, it would wipe the EEPROM for some reason and you would lose your Betaflight config. At that point, you're right. If it lost the ports tab, then you wouldn't have MSP on the USB and you wouldn't be able to connect. So it's possible that you still did that, and that by flashing it, you'll be able to restore functionality. That's a good guess. That you ran the battery down and it wiped it. Why do FPV quads have a worse connection when it's rainy or foggy? I got taught that usually you have a better connection when it's a light rain or some water. But you have a better connection? No, you have a worse connection. No, that's a myth, Dan. That's a myth. I'll tell you why that myth exists. It is true that water vapor in the air causes attenuation of RF signals, especially in the 2.4 gigahertz range, which is close to water's absorption or resonance peak, which is why microwaves operate at 2.4 gigahertz. That is true. However, the amount of energy absorbed is fractions of a decibel per kilometer. And I'm not going to pull out the math. I've done this math before on stream or on forum. But like monsoon level rains are like 1/10 of a dB per kilometer, which means that you'd need to be 15, 20 kilometers out before you really started to see a significant loss that was really noticeable among the sort of noise of the signal just going up and down in strength. So it is technically correct that rain and even fog cause additional attenuation. And so people latch onto that and they're like, did you know you'll get shorter range when it's raining? But they haven't actually sat down and done the math and found that that matters for a satellite link. That matters for a 50-kilometer microwave link, but it doesn't matter for the typical ranges that FPV pilots operate at, which is typically just a few kilometers or less. So
I have a question.
Yeah.
That is the case based on strictly the amount of water. So like, it doesn't matter where the water is. For instance, like if it's on the antenna, or let's say your antenna is underwater. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not saying underwater, but like, let's say your antenna is soaked, or like your quad antenna is soaked. Does that really make a difference?
Arguably, yes. Any material with a different dielectric constant is, I think, the term. There is a characteristic of materials that relates to the speed of light at propagating through the material. And if you put a material close to the antenna that has a different speed of light than the antenna is designed for, it will affect the propagation pattern, maybe the tuning. I'm not sure about that, but it'll certainly affect the propagation pattern of the antenna. So I could absolutely see an argument that water droplets accruing on the antenna, especially if it created like a sheen of water, which isn't that likely on an aircraft, on a quadcopter. I could see the argument that would have some effect on the coverage. I think the result would be minimal, but I'm not sure about that. Maybe dielectric constant isn't the right word. Maybe I just pulled that out of my butt. It is a word. Okay. So if you're observing that you have significantly worse range in the rain than when it's dry, I don't know what it is, but I think it's not the water in the air that's causing it. It's something else, and I don't know what it is. Any recommendations for a 5-inch freestyle around 700 grams all up weight? Oh, you're talking about props. Man, props are incredibly personal and depend on your flight style. I like to say the good news is that props are only like $4 a pack, so it's not too expensive for you to try out 5 or 10 different props and find the one you like. That's what I would say. I mean, like you're like, I tried Ethics S4 and the GemFan 4S. Any other recommendations? Well, HQ, right? And then in the GemFan world, there's like some 4.9-inch Spang props that are designed to be smaller and more responsive. And then there's like some 5.1-inch props, which have a little bit of a different feel. And so I would try out a variety of like 4.9, 5.0, 5.1, different pitches and so on. But just try them and see which one suits your flight style the best. Excuse me. Are You Too Close asks, is it best to just get separate goggles for analog and HD? Yes. The problem is money. If you have enough money to buy a separate set of analog and HD goggles, that's totally what you should do. I currently use my HD0 goggles as my analog goggle. And the reason is that the HD0 DVR is so good. It sounds silly, right? I recorded a video with my SkyZone goggles once. And I forgot. It's been so long that I forgot that analog DVR goes out of sync because frames drop and the DVR skips the frame. And I forgot how much effing work I used to have to do to sync up the analog DVR with my voice because it didn't stay in sync. The HD0 goggle records local audio. It has a built-in microphone. So when I'm talking, I can hear myself talking on the DVR, and it helps me sync the video with the rest of my cameras. And it stays correctly in sync, even when frames get dropped, even when recording analog. And it's just a good-looking, good-quality DVR. So I use my HD0 goggles as my main analog goggle for that reason. And that's not a reason that applies to a lot of people who aren't content creators. The HD0 goggles are fine analog goggles. I know there's people out there who say they have problems with black screen with green dots and rolling screen. Maybe it's because I have the original V1 hardware and this is a V2 hardware problem. I don't have that problem. I've been fine with the analog performance. Just the bulkiness of the HD0 goggles with the analog screen would make me choose dedicated analog goggles if it weren't for the DVR issue. So I would absolutely buy separate analog and digital goggles if you have the money to do it. But if you don't, there are some options other ways. The way you phrase the question makes me think you have the money. I would take the SkyZone 04X over the HDO Plus every day. I think it's a better goggle than the HDO Plus. The HDO Plus is just the same Fat Shark goggle that has been released for years and years and years with a slightly different screen. It has no user interface updates. And I think the performance and usability of the SkyZone is going to be superior. Wow. DCDK says, love you, Bardwell. Never heard this much positive Ukraine comments in FPV Livestream. Well, we do have a policy here of not making potentially inflammatory political comments. But if people are, I think that's because I showed my keyboard at the beginning of the stream. If people are being positive and not inflammatory, I'll leave it to the moderators to decide. Then more power to you. But I haven't made it no secret my position on the issue than my personal connection to the issue, since my editor Fabio lived in Kyiv before the invasion and is married to a Ukrainian woman. So, so I feel moderately forgiving of positive comments about Ukraine in the chat, as long as it's not becoming inflammatory and everyone is staying respectful. And I have no tolerance for negative comments, which will immediately be timed out. And if you like, that's biased, you're, yeah, it's my fucking channel. And it's my chat, so I can make that policy. But if anything gets inflammatory, then we'll just cut it off. Because the most important thing is that people, you know, respect each other and get along. Anyway, there you go. Get a couple more super chats here. DJI repaired and is sending me back both of my O3 Air units. Turned out to be a bad RunCam cable. Bought 2 new ones, and it's all good. Yeah, wow. Glad your Air units are fine. And sucks that that cable was bad. But there you go. I thought you I can't remember if I'm remembering correctly. I thought you tested multiple cables. Thank you for 119 Norwegian kroner. I'm buying a Shendrone Thick X8 6S with 2-piece ESC 60 amp connected together with AS150 connectors. I only have XC60 batteries. Can I use 2 6S 1500s with adapter? Now it uses 4500 AS150. I have to parse this. The battery it uses is a 450 6S. You want to use 2 1500s. I'm kind of surprised that the Thick flies off a 4500 6S. I would think it would use a bigger battery, but okay. If it comes from the factory spec for a 4500 and you're using 2 1500s in parallel, which makes a 3000, I think it'll be okay, but you won't get as long a flight time, obviously. That's pretty close. How complex is the Gepro C Mark V setup? I mean, as far as it comes from the factory ready to go, but you have to bind it and you have to set up your controller. You have to set up your hand controller. And that means you have to bind it, you have to set up the aux modes. And how complex is that? I don't know. It depends on your knowledge. Some people would say it's very complex. I'm going to look for my latest setup video. It appears to be from August 15th. What I'm going to suggest you do is look up Flywoo FlyLens 85 setup. And I believe I will show the controller setup here. Let's check the... Yeah. Bind and set up receiver. Set up aux modes.
Now that the receiver...
So if you find this video, Flywoo FlyLens 85 Betaflight setup, it shows me going through the same process that you will go through on your Mark V. Obviously, it won't be identical because it's a different quadcopter, but some of the things you have to do when you first get a quadcopter and set it up, and your process will be very similar. That's my advice to you. I'm switching to the O3 and I'm flying with no GoPro, trying to adjust to the new weight. What changes would you make in settings? None. Just stick time, buddy. Stick time. Get used to the new throttle position, new throttle resolution. I wouldn't change the settings at all, honestly. If you feel like the throttle's a little too much for you, go into the PID tuning tab and change the throttle scale. So I'll show you where to do that. Come on. So in the PID tuning tab, rate profile settings, throttle limit scale, throttle limit percent, and take that to something less than 100, like 80%. That'll reduce the power of the quad and make it a little easier to control. But like the whole reason you're going to enjoy flying without that GoPro is because of the additional responsiveness, snappiness, and agility. So I would actually say just get used to it. You should... A good pilot should be able to fly a quad with a hover position around 18-20%. No problem. A beginner is going to struggle with that much power and the precision because a lot of your flight is going to be basically between 0 and 50% throttle. You're seldom going to go over 50% throttle except for big throttle blips where you're kind of throwing it around. But it should be flyable competently with a hover position around, say, 18-20%. I've flown quads with a hover position at 15%. So basically, as soon as you raise the throttle, you hit 15% throttle, and it's in the air. And they have just a massive amount of power. And it is more difficult to fly them. But, a good pilot should be able to do it. So don't shy away from that. Don't try to learn to do it rather than try to use software to sort of, make up for your lack of skill. I mean, if you can't do it and you need the throttle scale, okay. Ultimately, it's your experience. If you're not having fun, then don't do it. But it's not out of the question to fly a quad with that power to weight. Blunty, you tried to hide that question from me so I wouldn't react to it and get baited. I'll just say this. It's my live stream. It's not a live stream about political debate. If you want to debate politics, there are places where you can do that. I go out and I consume media from opposing positions. I am not opposed to arguments that are opposed to me. I am not opposed to being challenged. This is not the place to do it. It's like when you go to have dinner at Thanksgiving dinner with your family. There are times when it's okay to have a robust political debate with people who challenge you, and there are times when it is appropriate to sit down and focus on something else and not be distracted. And the fact that you don't know the difference between those things is your problem. Have some more integrity, you say to me. Have some more compassion. Have some more just good manners. To think that you can go into a space and inject your opinions where they are not relevant or wanted simply because there is some ethical obligation to be receptive to challenging opinions. No. There is a place and a time, and this isn't that place or time, and you need to know the difference. Have all speech or none. Okay, well, I'm going to talk about this mole that I just found on my genitals at the president's briefing, at church, at my kindergarten class. There is a time and a place for certain types of conversations in certain types of spaces with certain types of people. And people like you who try to inject a specific kind of opinion, and then when you're told, hey, this isn't the time or place, you say, have some integrity. Don't you? You're closed off to opposing statements. That's just the excuse that you use to speak out of turn and to be rude. So, that's my response to that, sir. Okay. I hate that argument. If you say, hey, this isn't the time or place for that argument, we're not talking about that now. You go, yeah. There's a place for that. It's just not here. Okay. Enough of that. Should I get the Fat Shark HDO Plus bundle from Get FPV? I've said before, I'd get the Skyzone Skyo 4X or the Skyo 40 Pro before I got the HDO Plus. I'm just so tired of Fat Shark releasing the same gosh dang goggles year after year with a tiny change here, a tiny change there, not really doing anything to actually try to compete or try to improve. And I'm tired of rewarding them for it. I'm sure it's a fine goggle. It's the exact same Fat Shark goggle, more or less, that they've been released for the last 5 to 7 years with a slightly different optics module, and I'm done with it. I wouldn't. If you buy it, it's probably going to work fine for you. I wouldn't buy it. Is there a way to fix a bind and fly quad that had a Betaflight firmware update? Yeah, when you updated Betaflight, you wiped out your configuration. So you got to get the CLI dump from the manufacturer and download it. Yeah. And then install it on the quadcopter. Hopefully you can do that. Or you can rebuild the configuration from scratch, but I'm guessing you don't know how to do that or you wouldn't be asking. Is it true that you did competitive shooting at one point? I wasn't very good at it, but yes. I shot IDPA for, 6 months or a year, maybe a little more. And it was a lot of fun, but I wasn't very good. I wasn't, like, actually competitive. I just considered it a form of training. So. Hey, here's $5. Do you buy a big box of tissues and use them instead of sniffing? Ooh, the chat's spicy today, Blunty. Yeah, because I'm sure that would be so much better than whatever sniffing you're hearing. Hey, people breathe. We swallow. We cough. We spit. Sometimes we sniff. Suck it up. Suck it up. I think my sinuses are remarkably clear compared to how they have been sometimes. Am I sniffing? Am I sniffing? I don't know. Thank you for $5. If I could refund a super chat, I would. Like, I'm a human. Calm down. Just enjoy the live stream. Sheesh. Blunty had to let that through because it was a super chat. He absolutely would not have put that through because he knows how triggered I get. Do you still use the Orcas? No, but for the same, not because they're not good goggles, but for the same reason I said about the DVR on the HD0. Has anybody experienced the Goggles X freezing up upon disconnecting the quadcopter battery? I have not. Has anybody else experienced that? Flash firmware. That's all I can say. Anders Hoyle asks this question, and the question doesn't make sense to me. ARM is not working sometimes on ELRS. I use the power up 3 times method. You mean binding is not working? The power up 3 times puts it into binding mode. I don't know what if you powered it up 3 times, then it won't arm because it's in binding mode. I'm confused, and I think you're confused too.
Yeah,
so,
just to be clear, 3 times you bind to the radio, and then once it's bound, you're done, and then you don't ever have to do that again. And then it should just work every time you power both of them on.
Yeah.
Also, when you start your drone, you need to have you always have to disarm before you arm. And that seems obvious, but a lot of people don't get control in beta flight on the receiver tab or something and are very confused, but they've got their arm up, and you've got to have your arm at 1,000.
You won't even get movement in the receiver tab until the arm switches cycle?
If you start with arm up, you will not get movement in the receiver tab. You
Shut
get a C
up.
flashing C in the Lua. Yeah.
Shut up.
It's just like model match. It's the same thing as model match.
Shut up. You're always right, so I don't take this as disbelief, but I have to see this for myself. Fucking drones that don't power the receiver from... Oh, go to smoke stopper. I have to see this for myself. Okay, hang on. USB. Boo-doo-doop. Gonna get a USB noise here, chat. That's me, not you. Super rude. Radio on. Radio on, I said.
You're gonna learn something today.
I'm in a mood today.
Switch warning.
It's not the most mood I've ever been in. Okay, so arm switch is armed. Let's just double check on the Elrs Lua. Okay, good. Got the wrong model loaded.
Switch warning.
Thank you. Elrs Lua. It shows armed. So, okay. Now, we get beta flight. We go to the receiver tab. Power up. Well, shit, he's right. Oh, nope. Nope. That does not confirm your claim, Blunty. So the switch still says armed, but I do have movement. Let's try it again. Okay, armed.
Telemetry lost. Telemetry recovered.
Yeah. It seems to me like we do have movement in the receiver tab, but it won't arm. We have the armed status. Thoughts?
So it only blocks arming?
Beta flight. If we go to the setup tab, beta flight says Bad RX recovery. There's another one that says arm switch, I believe.
I see.
So beta flight will prevent arming, but we still have life in the receiver tab. It's
Gotcha.
not like model match where express LRS prevents the receiver from outputting.
Telemetry lost.
So then no matter how you have the switch set, if you flip, unflip, flip, can you arm? Because you clear the armed status warning? Is that correct?
In beta flight, you clear the arm status warning by flipping the arm switch.
You also cleared an express LRS by flipping the arm switch, is what I mean.
Yeah, but the only thing express LRS arm status is used for is dynamic power and telemetry if you're in race telemetry. Because it turns, as I understand it, if an ELRS dev tells me there's like two other things that I don't know about, then obviously I believe them. But the two I'm aware of are that dynamic power only works when you're armed, and if you have telemetry set to race, then when you arm, telemetry turns off. Other than that, I don't think the arm status does anything.
It was my assumption, I guess, that because the C was flashing and there was an error just like model match, that it would perform in the same way as model match and not send any data until it was solved. But obviously that is not correct.
Okay. Well, that's why I wanted. That's why I was like, that's interesting.
That's why we test stuff.
And if you had been right, I would have been delighted. Because I didn't know that. Anyway. All right, well, that's one beer you owe me. And then, like, you know, I think the balance is still well on your side. All right. Take this $10 and give yourself more reasons to sniff. Hey, Alex, I'm sorry. These days, $10 doesn't buy very much sniffing. If you know what I mean. Ooh, I insist not today for the sniffing, but for once, I have you live. Yes, I enjoy the live stream. Thank you for 5 Swiss francs. Please do an impression of your fave WWF wrestler trying to put a quad together for the first time. Super Deluxe, thank you, sir. I don't... who's my favorite WWF wrestler? Is it... I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't really... I'm trying to think. Is it The Rock? Is it Steve Austin? It's got to be Macho Man Randy Savage. I'll tell you this. Macho Man is the only WWF wrestler who I actually have an impression of. I'm trying to think. What does he sound like? I don't know. I in my head, I'm doing a Macho Man impression, but it just sounds like a pirate. Oh, I got to put the receiver on the flight controller. I started with the Macho Man and I ended up a pirate. I'm sorry, man. That's the best you're going to get. Oh, yeah. Snap into a Slim Jim. I don't know. Hey, I enjoyed the OnlyFans stream last night. Who knew ping pong balls and beard oil could do that? Incredible talent. Thank you for £5. I'll read it, but I'm not going to play to it. I'm new to the channel. Thanks for the beginner-friendly content. Great for orientation before first purchase. Thank you for €5 and the kind words. And Sunshine. Counterpoint. I have bad allergies and sinus issues. I'm hyper aware of others having similar issues, and I didn't notice a thing for the whole stream. Yeah, thank you for $5. I feel like I'm not sniffling a lot today, but hey, it's winter, so there are fewer, you know. What do you think, Plenty?
In case you didn't notice, the OnlyFans comment was a Mads Tech donation.
Oh, that was Mads Tech? Okay, that makes sense. Thanks, dude. All right, guys, we're getting close to the end of the stream. There are so many questions that I haven't answered yet because there just wasn't time, and also because I just ramble on and don't really prioritize getting through a huge number of questions when I'm on a roll. But, you know, by now, you've certainly come to expect that. If I didn't get to your question, please feel free to email me, jb@joshuabardwell.com. Everyone is welcome to do that. You don't have to be a patron. You don't have to leave a super chat. You just ask a question, and assuming it's not too out in left field and I am not too tired today, I'll probably answer it. So email me if I did not get to your question, and if your question's still outstanding. That's going to do it for the stream today, though. Aaron Ciotti is going to be streaming. Is he streaming? I think so. I'm going to guess he's streaming. How are the streams planned over the holidays? I don't know. Look at my calendar.
We'll be back tomorrow.
We'll be back
is
tomorrow
pretty
for
rare.
sure. Yeah, 2 days in a row. That's a little rare these days. Take that off the calendar. Let's see. Saturday. Well, Sunday the 22nd. I don't see why we wouldn't stream. The 23rd is Monday, and then the 24th is Christmas Eve. It feels like we'll stream the 22nd and 23rd, unless I get into some holiday shenanigans with my family and decide not to, but it seems like we would. And then the weekend of the 27th, 28th, 29th, I have something that I'm doing, and I will not be streaming. But the 30th, maybe the 30th, and then New Year's Eve, of course. So, yeah. It looks like we're streaming tomorrow. We'll probably have a normal schedule next Sunday and Monday, and then the week after that, no. So that's what it's looking like. Ciotti, come around. Is he streaming? He is not ready. He's making the thumbnail now. Well, paste the link, Ciotti. Where do you announce your streams? On my YouTube channel. On my YouTube channel. YouTube.com. Oh my God. Joshua Bardwell. Joshua Bardwell. Oh, someone's buying ad. Rotorite is buying ads on my name. You sons of bitches. People think this is my website. Visit site, and it goes to rotoriot.com. Joshua Bardwell. And they've got a page with my stuff. That's slick. I don't know how I feel about that. You search Joshua Bardwell, you get a Rotor-Riot ad, and then it takes you to Rotor-Riot's site. It doesn't say Rotor-Riot : Joshua Bardwell. It doesn't say Joshua Bardwell at rotorriot.com. It just says Joshua Bardwell and visit site. That's, I don't know, I might have a little feeling about that, but it's not, that's how they do it. Here's my website. You go to live, and here are all my scheduled live streams. Currently, you can see the scheduled live stream on the 16th, and then these are all in the past. So when I have live streams scheduled, they'll be just right here on my page under live. And if you don't see them scheduled, then I haven't scheduled them yet. So that's where I announce them, though. All right, guys. Oh. Thank you for your flying content. Sniffling is very impolite in Sweden. I don't know what to tell you, man. I'm not Swedish. I'm just me. I'm doing my thing. Calling people out for sniffling is very impolite in America, so... Thank you, Matty Cow Patty, for $10. Ciotti, you got the link yet, buddy? Wah, 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 wah. Wah, oh, Bardwell said, Bardwell, Rotor Riot pilot. Guys are ridiculous. Oh. All right, I'm gonna wrap up. Bye, everybody. Good luck, Ciotti. You missed the plug, Ciotti. I'm ending my stream. How do you not have the link yet?
I